Have you ever heard a speech where a speaker stands up on stage and they talk like this? Or ever listen to a piece of music where the beat just doesn't flow? Or watched a movie where the plot just feels choppy? It's a quick way to lose an audience. So if you want to make sure that your speech has fluidity, stay tuned. Now, in order for you guys to make sure that your speech has fluidity in it, and to make sure it's not choppy, there's two things you got to understand before going into the speech. And the first thing is, you got to understand where you are when you start the speech. And this also means, where's your audience at when you start the speech? What's their education level when it comes to this idea? Is this something that they're completely clueless about and you got to lay down a foundation? Or is it something that they should have somewhat of a general knowledge to be able to build off of it? And the second thing you got to understand is, what's the purpose of the speech? What's the goal of it? Is it to collect money from the audience? Is it to inspire them? Is it to give them a new idea of thinking? What's the whole reason for you delivering this message? Now, what this does is it structures you. Because if you don't know where you're at and you don't know where you're going, you start hitting all these different marks and you're going all over the place and it's just completely awful. So if you know where you're at and you know where you're going, fill in the blanks on how to get there. For instance, you want to go from 1 to 5, you can't just go from 1 to 4 to 5, even from 1 to 3 to 5. You got to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and then you get to 5. So fill in the gaps on how to get there. Because yes, every speech, you got one general topic of what you want to talk about, but for you to meet the main topic, you got to fill in little tiny topics on how to get there. So after you master that, then comes arguably the most important part while you're delivering the speech. And this is mastering the transitions. Because, like I said, every single speech you have tiny little points that you're trying to make ultimately to get to your big point. But you got to be able to connect point 1 to point 2 to where it keeps it fluid. 1 to 2 to 3. So let me give you guys an example. Everybody knows about global warming. I don't even have to go into it. So I don't got to go through the introduction, so then we'll just start maybe your first point. You start talking about numbers. Everybody's heard the numbers before. Water levels rising at 15%. I don't know, I'm completely making this up. Water levels rising at 15%. In about 20 years, the temperature will raise by another 10%, and go on and on and on. After you talk about your first point, then you connect it to the second point, which is, so, what does all this mean? What does this mean for you? How many of you guys live by the coast? Raise their hand. How many of you guys like going to the coast? Okay, great. Because in about 20 years, Santa Cruz is going to be underwater. Bring in those facts. You connect one fact to the other fact. So then after you finish up that fact you're talking about individual people, so you go from numbers to people to our lifetime, then you talk about, so, as a species, what's going to happen to us? What about that little kid that you love at home? Your grandkids? What happens to them when we're gone? When they reach 40 years old? Well, at that point, and hit whatever marks you want to hit. You guys following what I'm saying? So the whole purpose behind it is you got to understand where you're at. You got to understand where you're going. You got to fill in the gaps on how to get there. And you got to be able to connect each little section to each other. Simple enough? I hope so, guys. All right, guys. Remember, y'all got a story out there. You just got to learn how to tell it. Thank you guys for watching.